Hi, my name's James, and I've got a fun idea for you. What if you could play Warhammer whenever you wanted? You could play it on a plane. You could play it on a train. You could play it on a boat. Never mind. You get the idea. All you have to do is shrink a 6x4 gaming table to the size of a large book. Sounds easy, right? I got this idea from Bill Making Stuff, and it was one of those ideas I had to start right away. I had this old Winsor & Newton oil painting set that I decided would be absolutely perfect for the job. First, I tried to be gentle, and when that didn't work, I decided to go all ham on it. Got myself a pair of pliers and tore it apart. Because this was the only box I had, the scale didn't really matter at this point. I figured I'd just work it out later. One thing I did know though is that I wanted to magnetise it, so I ordered these from Amazon. Pop the links down in the description below so you can click on those and pick them up if you want to. Magnets are always cool, right? Cut them to size with kitchen scissors. I peeled off the adhesive film thingy, then I stuck it in place. So far, so good. Next went this bit, and finally, this bit. I mean, yeah. It's a magnet. Oh yeah, I made these tiny little Battletech figures. I'll get to them later though. I could have made this more complicated, but I decided to keep it simple and just literally squirt some PVA glue straight out of the tube and then spread it around with a brush. Listen, there's no need to make this stuff complicated. This is just sand like the stuff you put in your fish tank. Sprinkle it on and shake it around until you're done. If you use too big a grain size, you won't be able to stick your models to the base, so don't do that. Instead, I'm just sprinkling on a tiny little bit of finely ground cork, just to make it look like it's not just a box full of sand. Despite the very obvious fact that it is a box filled with sand. Making this look good is actually relatively simple. Just prime it black. Then, grab some fairly neutral, sort of earthy tones like greens and browns and just stab those on with a rough brush. Do it in a sort of random pattern, and you can't go too far wrong really. Just keep going until you think you're done. Easy. Hey kids, remember overhead projectors? No, of course you don't. Well, they're what we had in schools before we had computers. And if you're wondering what that has to do with a gaming box, well, nothing really. It's just what I think of when I see those little acetate sheets. What are the sheets? Well, I'm very glad you asked. Basically, I wanted the box to be able to be used for multiple games. Warhammer, Kill Team, Warcry, whatever really. But the game I really love is Battletech, and that needs hexes. I downloaded this transparent hex background. I'll put a link to it down below. Did a little bit of careful guesstimation, printed it, got it wrong, printed it, got it wrong again, printed it, and got it right. Now I know that each one of these little hexagons is roughly equal to about an inch, so I don't need to bother with rulers anymore. If you're enjoying the video, make sure you drop a comment down below. It really helps to keep the YouTube gods happy. This blue stuff is XPS foam, and now I'm going to cut it up to make all my cool little rock terrain shapes. Now I should have used a snap-off blade to cut this, but I didn't have one, so I tried to use a hacksaw blade, but that was a dismal failure, so I ended up using a Stanley knife. It wasn't quite as good, but I hacked it apart, and actually it looks fine, so it just goes to show, make do with what you got, you'll be absolutely fine. And if it doesn't work, just wing it. To make the shapes, I literally just drew random wriggly shapes on top of the XPS foam and then cut around them. Nothing more complicated than that. I drew shapes that I thought would look cool, and then if I didn't like them, I got rid of them later. I'm not gonna lie, and I know it doesn't sound like it, but I am giddy with excitement. At this point I have to test it out. Let's see if it all fits in one side. Nailed it. I didn't want my rocks to look just like blobs, so on the larger ones I chopped chunks out of them, adding a few different levels, and that made them look a bit better. You know the Hallelujah Mountains in Avatar? Well, it turns out they're a real place, the Zhangjiajie National Park, in China. And that's what I wanted these rocks to look like. There were a couple of ways I could have done it, but I chose to copy Nerdforge and Bill Making Stuff and Eric's Hobby Workshop by basically just attacking it with a Stanley knife. It's actually really good fun. Basically, you make vertical slits in the rock and then horizontal slits and then just pick out bits of foam until you're happy with the result. It looks really messy, but actually it looks really good too. But I guess I'll let you be the judge of that. Once you've done one, you sort of get the hang of it. This is the last one. I got really good by now. In order to make my terrain movable, I decided to magnetise it. To do that, I used these 5mm magnets. I checked to make sure they got the pole the right way around, and then I stuck them in to make a hole and glued them in place. Now Bill, in his video, used a hot glue gun, and I should have done that too. Super glue melts the ABS, which I already knew, but I thought I'd get away with it. Flash forward to the future, I did not get away with it. So then I switched to PVA glue, which is fine, but just takes ages and ages to set. So, pro tip, don't try and be clever, just use the right tool. Now it's time for painting. Stick them on a cocktail stick so you've got something to hold, then spray them black. I used an airbrush, but you can just as easily use a paintbrush. A little while back I did a video where I painted with craft paints, which means I had these little tubes from Arte knocking around, and they were absolutely perfect for this. I wiped off the worst of the excess, then just literally heavily dry brushed. Is that a thing? I don't know. I painted all of the bits and pieces, but tried to avoid the very deepest recesses, so I had some shadows in there. Over and over and over till I built up a colour that I liked the look of. Nothing more to it than that, really. That's one done. And now all the rest. I love dry brushing. Literally, I'm just using a lighter colour just to catch all the surfaces on the rest of the rocks. Helps make them look a lot more realistic. So this is what they look like so far. They don't look too bad, but they just look a little bit dull. Don't worry though, we can work on that. This stuff is called Dirty Down Moss, and it's basically how I made all the green effect on the rockwork. Doing this on every single thing was a bit tedious, but worked an absolute treat. But we can still do better. Just gotta find the right thing. Wait, yes, this is what we want. I reckon we're missing some foliage. It's time to get all Salt Bay. I'm gonna take my weird plasticky, floral, crummy stuff and mix it together so there's a few different colours. Then I'm gonna take this stick by Stuart Semple, which is a complete waste of money by the way, and is basically just watered down PVA glue. Apply that to the model and then sprinkle the foliage on top. Hopefully it's gonna look okay. Let's find out. To finish up, just like all your minis, you gotta paint the rim black. That just makes it look a little bit more neat and tidy. I should probably talk about the miniatures too, I guess. Now, don't get me wrong, I love painting, but there's a time and a place for all things, and that time and that place is definitely not when you're painting travel-size Battletech. So, after I'd scaled them down on the 3D printer, got lots of tiny little pink models, cut them off and prepped them a little bit. All I did was I zenithal primed them and then painted them with contrast paint. Some people call this underpainting, some people call this slap chop. I don't care. It's fast. Then I used my ultimate lazy painting hack and got out my Gundam pans to paint stripes and details. That's it. We've got blue team, we've got pink team, let's go. Listen, as ever, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody over on the Discord, especially my patrons. I really couldn't do this sort of stuff without you. Check out the affiliate links, subscribe, like. Thank you so much, everyone. See you next time.